Okay, hey everybody, so I've got no exact plan for this video. I know I want to cover more of the code generator and stuff, but we're kind of just going to wing this and see how it goes. The first thing to show off is that I have been working on the JSON system more. If you've been following my Twitter account, I have been noting that the block JSON system does work. It is now fully functional and can be used. You can define the name, material, ID, the mod. It's going to be registered to resistance, subtypes, and now it's finally got tile entities. So you can define the tile entities. This is part of the whole code generation system, as that was one of the goals, to make it be able to generate a tile entity, but then you use JSON to actually hook that tile and make it work. So let me go ahead and show off our examples real quick that I've created, if I can remember where I put these things. Okay, so there should be down here. So we've got two examples here. These are for me to test, so that's the reason why they're in a test folder. They're not shipped with Volts Engine, but they're a great way to actually check to see if things work. So we've got one block, which is just called test block, and we've got another block, which is called test block 2, which then has a tile entity. I'm going to go ahead and load Minecraft as we talk here. You know, actually, let me edit some configurations here, and we're going to load up configuration 2, but I need to make it run a couple of configurations here. So it needs to run the test system, and it needs to run the code generator. So hit apply on that real quick. And we actually edited the wrong one. I actually wanted to edit this one. Oh well. Can really quickly fix that. So this should have, yeah, this has my username in there, so it'll actually load up as me. It has all that stuff in there. And I just need to adjust the mods it loads up. So I'm going to go to project structure and adjust this. And I just need to add the test system to it. Actually, I need to add the code generator and the test system. If I don't do that, the code generator won't run. This folder I want? No, it's not that folder. So there's tests. I feel like I'm spacing out here. Oh, tests are already in there. Derp. We'll go ahead and run this though. So run Minecraft client 2. This should load pretty quickly. But when it comes to adjustments I've made to the actual code generator, so last time I showed off, I had got it working, but it was really crudely done. The version I've got is not much better, but it is segmented out so that way the code generator is a self-sufficient program. It does depend, actually it doesn't, I don't think it depends on any Minecraft code whichever, which means somebody could go and recycle this for whatever project they wanted to do. I'm going to go ahead and open up that package, and I'm probably going to end up renaming it to application code generator here pretty soon. So right now it's VE, so it acts as a submodule for VE at the moment. So I've trimmed out the main class. It's now down to about 300 and something lines. This will get trimmed down some more. The major things that I've added is that there's now multiple template folders can be loaded up. Processors have to be specified now, so you have to specify where your processor classes are. This will load right here, so it'll actually load up the processor, it'll create it, initialize it with the run settings so you can load in additional settings. It'll then come down here and it'll actually load up the templates from the template folder. Processors do identify templates separately via their own annotation system or their own marking system whatsoever. Right now it's annotation based, but that doesn't have to remain that way. It could be some weird naming convention for all I care. There is a finalize system that was added here, so it actually will call finalize. This is for things like if you wanted to create a registry file at the end. You wanted to generate some kind of data to say, here's all the things you've made. And of course, we still got our handle directory. Now, handle directory does its normal thing here until you get the handle file, which will actually go to each processor and go, hey, can you deal with this? Right now, the way it does that is just goes contains annotation. So if I flag a tile with the annotation for this processor, that processor will run on the file. Additionally, I now keep track of a build data object, which will keep track of the annotations, the original class name and package. It'll also keep track of the output class and the output package. This is fed into the processor system, which is a new addition as well. Key thing to note from the last video, we were calling the templates processors. They have been renamed to templates in their own little objects now. If I open up here, these are the templates which actually load in all the data from the template and store everything. There is now a processor object, which is actually what does the work. This is all extracted out of the main class and broken down into little pieces. So we got our initialize, handle file, finalize. The actual build process here, which has some nice warnings here. This is actually going to get much larger here eventually. I'm going to probably put a full disclaimer, warranty, copyright, all the fun things at the top of these. This is not really for the mods to use this part here. This is if somebody else comes and uses the code generator and makes a file and then blames me for it breaking. The warranty's put there saying, hey, this file was generated, therefore it has bullshit for warranty. Yeah, this will just break things down. I've improved the import statement a little bit here. There's now a collect import call, and then there's a collect ignore import. Between the collect and the actual output will eventually be some code to determine if the imports are used to try to optimize down the imports. There'll be a few things there. Some issues have been fixed with the class header, and here's the reason why we're doing the build data here is it's being passed in everything. I was trying to pass in like 10 variables at the end of this, and this was just getting ugly, so I was like, hey, you know what, build data, and we just add stuff to build data as we need it. Create the body, here's the load template. Load template actually passes in an annotation ID. Annotation IDs are defined up here. And the actual tile processor is created in Volts engine. If I can go find it real quick. Okay, that's the actual engine object, and here's the core. So right here is code generator. We have our templates for each of our things. These are the things we created in the last video. And here's the processor, which really all it does is handles the file. It actually loads in the data that says, okay, I'm looking for a class name. I'm then ensuring I have a class name. I'm then loading the templates up, making sure my templates aren't empty. If they're empty, I load the default template, and then I call build. And of course, there's a constructor defined here. And it also makes sure we ignore this import, and it tries to ignore this import as well if it's not contained. But this has been loaded in the background for a few minutes now, so we're going to go ahead and show the fact that the system does work. I tested it here earlier and put a picture out on Twitter. Let me go ahead and clear this. So here's the test mod. This actually shows off two items already running with the item system. And here's the two blocks. So here's a block, which is the tile one. I don't know why it's sorting in front now. Last time I loaded this up, it was block, then block 2. But I never understand why the Minecraft tabs like to change order every so often. So if we place them both, they both do place. Now, they don't have any right-click action on them, so we could just kind of infinitely place them. I have no tooltip system loaded, so I can't actually tell which tile is which at the moment. But if we load up one of my debug tools, we'll right-click this one, and this will tell us that it's metadata value 0. It'll tell us what class, which is a block base, which is our JSON block system. It's been renamed to block base because it has actually very little to do with JSON and can be recycled for whatever people want to use it for. It'll also give me the name, which is VE test block. And if we right-click this one will give me pretty much the same information, except it now has a tile entity right here. This is tile entity VE test. And if I open up my test folder again, and we go down into the mod section here, here's the tile entity that's loading. Now, this system is designed so that way you have to make a tile entity for this to work. This is the reason why I made the code generation system, is I don't want to make a tile entity every time I need one. So instead, I can make a logic object. That logic object just defines very basic logic about the tile. We then generate a tile going around it that will do our inventory, our energy, we'll do a lot of other things, and we're done. And the same principle will apply to everything else. Like eventually we'll have a block generating object so we can generate blocks with additional method calls in them. We'll have an item system which will generate all of our item code. This will also then be layered into our abstraction system. So you'll program something using the abstraction system, but then the code generator will parse over and turn it into either actual Minecraft code or a layered system like our logic system. Which, for those who haven't seen the logic system, let me go ahead and close everything out here, and I'll go grab the logic system real quick. So that's built into the core here. It's actually one of the frameworks I'm working on. So right here it's logic. So logic system is based on a node. The node actually just defines basic behavior. Right now it's got nothing in here but two-string code and get and set host code. If we go down to, I believe this, no, not that file. To be honest, I probably should have something in here, but it's this one here. So in here, we've got our test tiles. So here's a fluid tank. Literally all you need to do to store fluids is this. define a tank, define a provider, say I want to be wrapped in a tank file, and say I need to be wrapped with a tile class. This will then, when the code generator runs, will output files in here, which I'm curious why it didn't actually do that. Still a lot to work out on the system. It needs to be unit tested and debugged and all kinds of fun things. Let's see, what did it say? It can't find the template classes. That's the reason why it's not working. That is really easy to fix. What had happened is I changed where the templates are stored. I moved them from the code generator back to Volts Engine. And this is something I've been doing for a while, is moving stuff back and forth. So these are right here is where I want is gen test. Actually, we'll go gen test.java so it's not having to dig as deep to find things. So this is our output folder, processors, templates. It's up here in the front, so where our input is. Eventually there might be multiple inputs here, but the system will be limited to one output. It will accept multiple templates, which was already implemented, and it will accept multiple processors, which is already implemented. But there's only going to be one output folder because the ideal is that you're going to output these to a single folder. And then from that single folder, you do whatever you want to do. If you want to copy them around, you want to merge them or do whatever. The ideal is the processor should be only run on one mod at a time. You shouldn't be running it on as a batch job type system, because eventually this will be changed to a JSON system where you feed it a JSON property file, and that property file says, okay, here's my mod name, here's all my ID list, here's everything I need to have generated, here's where to look for files, here's templates, here's the processors I want to run, here's the plugins that need to be run, because of course the templates will be moved to a plugin type system, but etc., etc. Now if we run this again, we'll actually get what I'm looking for. Yeah, here it goes. It actually outputted things. So writing file to disk tells me where it's writing to. It actually, this thing IDs everything. It will ID when things are actually not files. Like it found processor node here, but then it notes it's not an actual file, so it can't use it. But if we go in here, we have our tiles. It's created them all. And if we go to look at our fluid tank, here's the tank. So this wrapper is our fluid tank. It ensures that this is created. I believe this is a final variable, so it can't not be edited. Yeah, so it's final, so it's locked in there when it's created. And it gives us all of our variable properties, so this actually would work if this was a real tile. Now we could create some block JSON right now, and this would load up, and we could pump fluids in and out of it if I actually had a fluid mod. Let's see, do I have anything in here I could pump stuff with? I have open computers. I have tankers. I might be able to get away with, well, nah, tankers doesn't really have much. IC2 have pipes? I do not think IC2 has pipes. I would have to throw like BuildCraft or something in here to get pipes, which I'm not going to do today. Another day we'll do that. We might be able to do the inventory system, because then I could just test that with hoppers. Yeah, let's do this real quick. So in order to test this, I'm going to have to need to create a block JSON, which means I need to shut this down. So we need to go down to our test system, wherever it is. That's our code test right there. To be honest, this code test stuff will get moved to the test folder here later. It's just sitting in its own little independent folder to keep it from being accidentally imported. So actually we don't need that folder. We need the content folder. All the JSON stuff, by the way, has to be put into a content folder or the external content folder. I'll show off the external content folder another day. We go in here and we're going to copy this, paste it. I'm going to call this block inventory. By the way, when it comes to naming these files, it doesn't matter. It's the content of the file that actually matters. You can put as many things as you want to put in a single file and it will load. The only thing you need to also do is if you have multiple blocks, for example, you got to do colon like that, or :2 or :3, because if you have multiple entries with the same name, when JSON goes to load it, it will override the last entry. It's not exactly an intelligent system. I believe, actually I don't remember what I'm using. I might be using Google's system, but regardless of what it is, it doesn't actually work properly. So we need to name this. The name here doesn't matter, it's used for localization, so this will be inventory test tile. The ID does need to follow Forge's convention, but we're in 1.7, so there's nothing to really do other than just make sure there's no underscores or anything. The mod needs to stay the same. Material doesn't really matter because we're not testing that. We do need to make sure the ID here is different because if this overlaps, Forge will complain. Actually, I believe FML will actually crash. No, yes, I am right on that one, FML. Okay. Then we need to go to our generator system real quick. Oh, not that one. Generator test, and we need to go get our class package. So we're testing the inventory code here. So I need the package name, and then I need the name of the tile. I will probably figure out some system to make this easier. Probably end up coding the code generator to actually inject the name into your JSON file here. Or alternatively, there'll be like a global property system where you'll just have a ID key you'll put here, like I'm looking for the class with hashtag the name of my tile, or hashtag the name of my block plus metadata or something. And then there'll be a global property file that'll go like, hey, oh, this is what this means, and it'll go ahead and pass it in. Because I got to do JSON merging anyways, so for overrides. So say, for example, you want to override the energy value in a tile. The energy value would be stored in a JSON file. But you can't, well, you don't really want to be editing things inside the jars in case you want to update. But you can go to the external folder, put a thing in there, and it'll work. At least when I implement it, it'll work. So this is set up here. This will run. I do need to add some more code to this, or this will not function. So we just kind of pretty much want to return true on both of these methods here, because we don't care what's actually stored in here. I could add a GUI to this really quickly too, and it'd function perfectly fine. But I don't have all day because here about 8:30, I think I'm heading out. So we just want to return true on both of these, and then we should be able to use this with a hopper. Basically what these are, by the way, are just callbacks for inventory code to check if we're storing stuff. These two call into this one. This one just provides you slot by default. This acts as a filter system. And of course, there's an on-inventory change. And there's a few other things we could do. I probably will be implementing render code here later, so we could actually define a render for this object. But this right here is all you need for an inventory. If you want a GUI, you could slap a GUI on this as well. All you would have to do is put iGUI tile on the end of this, and then supply the GUI in both the return methods. Eventually, there will be a JSON system to create the GUIs because of the fact that most GUIs look exactly the same, and I already have enough graphic templates built out for GUIs to function. So it makes sense to do a JSON system. But we're going to go ahead and run this, and this should do what it's supposed to do. Actually, that is the wrong method, so we want to hit run, and then we want to hit run Minecraft 2. I'm probably going to rename that from Minecraft 2 to like Minecraft Small or something. Because I have another Minecraft client which is basically a duplicate of my existing one. Because IntelliJ likes to act funky when you try to run the same configuration twice. So I've got two configurations. If you see this actually ran the generator thing, it ran all the tests. Now it's actually loading up the project itself. When it comes to actually working with the workspace, if anybody wants to use a code generator, you just you load this up into your workspace, you set it all up, and you just tell it to run before the game launches. Or you tell it to run before your unit test. Theoretically, I should be running this before unit test and then actually having the unit test execute code on these to ensure these are functioning correctly. I know for sure I'm going to be programming a JSON system to create unit tests. Oh, we broke something. Failed to find class because we're not passing back one of the dependencies here. So this is what we want, and then I need to add a modular to this, and that would be the VE code gen tests. If you don't add something to this, this doesn't get added to the class path. If it's not in the class path, the JVM can't find it. It's actually a big issue I'm looking into because I want to be able to run a plugin system kind of like Minecraft has. You know, you load a mod from the mod folder. I got to implement that for the code generator, so that way you could just throw everything in the plugins folder and you don't have to specify what plugins you want to load. You can specify them by name that you need to run them, but it would be preferable not to have to go, okay, run my application with -jar, and then at the end just append all of the jars you want to run. Although that would be pretty easy to do, and I'm tempted to just make a bootstrapper that would load everything in the plugins folder. I've made bootstrappers for clients before. They're not too difficult to make. They're also very useful if you want to update code or anything. So say you have a new version of your code generator you want to download, you have a new version of a plugin, you can just have the bootstrapper download it. Although on that same note, I've got to fix an issue for a client because his bootstrapper doesn't work properly. What did we break? Where were we calling toString from? Register tile entity. Okay, registered tile. So we, oh yeah, okay, I see what happened. Shoot. If world doesn't equal null. I forgot that there's a lot of stuff that goes on with all my registry systems that checking if the world is null is actually very important. Yeah, that'll work. If you guys can hear my dog snore in the background. Small little dog snores louder than I do. Think the dog heard that. Oh well. This should load now. What had basically happened is there's a debug message on one of the registries that says, okay, I've registered this tile. It's just informing you that it worked. Although I probably should remove that debug because I mean, you got all this stuff that gets spammed in here, and most people don't read this. And the main debug should be there to inform the user currently operating the software, not to help developers debug the software. You can create separate log files for full debug versus light debug. So you get light debug is for the user, full debug is for the developer. And you can make both of those, and I have applications where I have both of those. At least this is loading quicker though. It's making these videos a lot easier to do when this loads in under a minute or two. I need to remove tankers from here, but unfortunately Volt's Engine is dependent on it in the dev environment because we have compatibility to fix recipe duplication with tankers. Because tankers assumes if something's called gear, for example, it's always worth 4 ingots. So if you go to smelt down my gear, which is worth 1 ingot, it turns into 4, and then you just make my gear again, and you do infinite duping. I had to fix that. Okay, so our tile still works. And we should now have a third tile in our list here. Inventory test tile. If we place this down, this actually is noting we are tile entity wrapper test tile inventory, so it is that generated tile we have. Hard to read this. I actually need to clean this debug up here, but we should be able to just stick a hopper on the top and bottom, and I should get results. Toss my handgun clips up there. These are all empty, by the way. Unfortunately, it's working. So it's doing a pass through. So that right there is that's for those who are not familiar with this. This is dramatically less code than is required to actually do inventory. This is the amount of code that is required to do inventory in 1.7. Newer versions of Minecraft, it is a lot simpler. There's not as much work that is required, but this is still a pain. Doing it this way, much simpler. And you gotta imagine if you had energy code on this and you had RF support on top of that, IC2 support, Tesla support, BuildCraft support, Open Computers, CC, this would pile up really quickly because you would have tons and tons of this method call, and your class file would go to 1,000 lines long. I've seen some people's mods where they had like a 4,000 line tile entity because they refused to do what a lot of people do and make a lot of prefabs because they didn't want to have duplicate overlay of code. This prevents duplicate overlay of code because you only have the code you need. If I want tile code, you only have tile code. If I want fluid code, you only have fluid code. If I want both, I can have both. But then at the same time, I only need to apply the minimum here. Though as well, you can technically get around with this with a few different ways, but I'm not going to go into that. The thing is that this is functional. We can layer tile entities on this, and we can a lot of stuff with this. And the cool thing about this as well, this is actually not a tile entity. This is a tile node, which means if I make a minecart, I can slap this into a minecart, and that minecart now has an inventory. I can open and close it. I can put stuff in and out of it. It would work with hoppers from other mods because it would go, hey, you're a minecart, I want to stick stuff in you. And it would function. You know, it's actually... Yeah, no, I'm not going to implement a GUI on this. Let's see what we're at. We're at 25 minutes, man. We got more time we can do stuff with. But I'm not exactly sure what else we're going to work on. Probably just work on more method calls here. So one of the things I was working on before I got into making this video is that I need to fill out our block wrapper class. So in our framework, we actually have the block. This is what actually is the block for our tile entities. This is created, it's initialized with block property data, and the block property data we have our registry key, which is what is given to Minecraft to tell what block it is, the mod, the name, material, hardness, localization, or name. Basic property values. A lot more is going to be added to this. There's going to be some render control code in here. Not much render control code because most of the render system will be JSON, so I won't have to deal with it. But what I got to deal with is that there's a ton of methods I've got to wrapper to different things. I've started with this as here's the GUI handling code and here's the on right click code. So this is if we have an iActivatable on our tile, you right click, it'll pass right click in. If you have iGUI tile in there, it'll open your GUI up. By default, it calls 0 on the ID because there's no real ID system to really use. I actually don't think I need an ID system. Oh, I guess there's an ID system. The only problem with this is that there's no way to get the ID for the activation. I will just have to rely on pretty much... I just kind of have to rely on the person who makes the tile to figure this stuff out. I am going to add a method to this though. Default open or I'm trying to think of how to handle this. Should open on right click. This would be a boolean, and of course I gotta remove that semicolon at the end. And this would return true by default. And we'll just put a little description up here. This will allow people to kind of customize how it works. True if should open, and then we can add another method below this to give a little bit more control. Get default GUI ID, and we're going to actually replace that last part, and this will return 0. And what we're also going to do is we're going to pass in the player, because in both these cases we will have access to the player. But we're going to note that in some cases the player could be null. At param player who is trying to open the GUI in rare cases can be null. And then we'll put that down here too. ID of the GUI. Yeah, I think the whole ID system will work properly because of the fact that, actually, I think there is a special way this is supposed to be handled. I can check this real quick. I actually don't think it is the case because of the fact of how all this runs. It is under the mods. Oh no, it's not under the mod because that's the compatibility layer. Prefabs maybe? No, it's probably libs. Yeah, here it is. Abstract proxy. Okay, so here's where we handle all of our GUIs. So GUI ID 102 is a player-based GUI, I think. No, actually it's not. Oh no, okay, so player 102 is we want to open, yeah, this is item stack. 101 is entities, and this is our tile entity. And tiles automatically, unless it's either one of these reserved IDs, gets the benefit of everything. Theoretically, we probably could check what tile it is, but if somebody's using 10,000 IDs, they're fucking up something. We can make these negative numbers too, which would actually work out pretty well. There's several ways we can get around this, but I'm just going to assume people will understand that they can't use those two ID numbers. So we do want to pass an ID, so we actually want to do this too. We're going to go node dot should open by default. This gives us actually extra benefits if we want to lock the tile from being opened by certain players. That's all the code you needed right there. And we need this right here, and this will be tiles, what this will be cast to. And then we just need to go here and do node dot get default ID for player, and this will be tile dot get default ID for player. And we just implemented some extra layered on there, and because it's actually a default system, that's the wrong method. Okay, because it's the default system, any older tiles do not have to implement this code, but now any newer tiles now have access to this, which is really good. Adds backwards compatibility while at the same time giving you more functionality, which is the beauty of the Java 8 interface, default interface system. It allows things like that. It also allows you to layer like extra bits on there that you don't actually need. Key example here, we have left click and right click in here. Neither of these actually need to be implemented. It's recommended something is implemented though. But this gives us activation support for our right click, which is this method. And left click is here somewhere. Oh, here's right left click. Yeah, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to drag this down to the right click code. That way they're next to each other. I'm probably going to abstract this out a bit too. The old tile system doesn't pass this in directly to tiles. What it does is it goes, okay, are you a wrench? And if you're a wrench, then it actually is a separate method that it calls. We can implement that real quick. Let me just go ahead and create an object here so I can hit Control B and jump to it. This is the old tile class. This is what I was talking about when you have to do a lot of things. This is almost 1,500 lines just to provide basic functionality. There's not a lot of stuff going on here. It's all really small methods. There's things like we set the owner IDs and stuff, which is not even used by everything. There's like, I think only like 6 tiles in my entire workspace that use the owner ID system. I was thinking about doing something like Thermal Expansion had where like every tile could be locked. It has been a plan of mine to do for such a long time. I used to work on a mod called Greater Protections, which I was trying to make to get my brother encouraged in it. He helped out with it. I got his buddy to make a glass mod that had glowing glass and other things. And of course, this is back in like the beta Minecraft days. Now there's like I think a dozen mods that have glowing glass. Where's the method I'm looking for right now? You know, I'm looking for this, and this method probably doesn't exist in the context I'm looking for. Actually, here they are. So here's on right click with a wrench. I don't think we have the sneak method. Oh yeah, here it is, on activated. Right there is the code I'm looking for. Is usable wrench, on right click wrench, damage wrench. So this is the code we want. And we want to carry this over to this. And yeah. We're going to need to create a system for this. And we're going to need to create an interface for this. I believe I do have something, iWrenchable maybe. I need to check, oh no, iWrenchable is a removable system, and that is not to be implemented directly. Although I got to reprogram this to handle a new node system, because right now this is only designed to handle tiles. It doesn't recognize how nodes work. Although I can make a template for this to make it pass the node automatically. That would actually save some coding time, because then you wouldn't actually have to explain how anything works. You just go, hey, I want to be right click to be picked up with a wrench, and you're done. So I need to make a new system, and it needs to be called pretty much iWrench activatable. I can actually just use my current activation system and put in there, but that would be a little fugged. So we need to make a new interface. And I got so many interfaces at this point. Eventually I'm going to go through here and like right before we make the release for the new Volts Engine version and just clean this whole thing out, figure out what interfaces I'm using, which ones I'm not using, and then repackage everything so it's easier to understand. Like put all the providers in the same system. iTag render needs to go up to the client system. I don't think iTag render is even used. So we want iActivate wrench or iWrench. iWrench activatable or activatable. Yeah, iWrench activatable would be more preferable because if I went iActivatable wrench, you'd be thinking, well, is it a wrench that's activated? When it's not, it's iWrench activatable, which means you're activating via wrench. This should work. Cool. Then I need to just check it, so I need to go if tile is an instance of iWrench activatable. And this code technically needs to go near the, oh no, we need this at the top. That's the whole trick with this system. Is there's the iTile node and then there's everything else. I need to create a new method. So protected object get tile is what we're going to call it. And we're just going to grab this code right here. That's all we really need. And what this will be used for is we'll have our conventional tile call here. But then we're going to check if we're an inode, and for an inode we're going to pass back the node. If not, we're going to return the tile. So we're going to return tile.getTileNode. This will fix this whole jumbled mess here because we have separate handling for tile node, then we have separate handling for the tile, and we don't want separation between the two. We want to just be able to call whatever. Object tile equals get tile, and this will be world X, Y, and Z. And this is kind of, I wish that we had similar things that other languages have where we can say, okay, this is always going to be only two types, so you want to make sure it's only the two types. So this we just need to fix a few things here. System needs X, Y, and then Z. This doesn't use the pause system in order to allow other people to use it, although on right click ironically does. So activatable wrench, or actually you want to go like this, and then tile, and then this needs to be X, or actually this needs to be hit X, hit Y, and then hit Z, which by the way, these values are exactly where the player has touched the face of the tile, although they're relative to the full-sized block and not the partial-sized block. So if you made a block that was not a full-size block and you try to use that code, it would not work properly. There are ways to fix it though. And I'm not going to fill out the rest of this data. Okay, then we want to do else on this case. So how it works is if I right click the wrench and I activate a wrench, then I want to capture it always. So I always want to make sure that, actually I also need to do this too. So it actually needs to go, are you a wrench, and then if it's an instance of activatable. So if you right click with something other than a wrench, it doesn't fuck everything up. But so you click with a wrench, and if your wrench activatable, and even if you don't do anything on right click, you still want to return false, because say that there is a state of mind where you would right click and that wrench would have worked, but it didn't work in this case because say you're using it for rotation and you're already rotating in the exact face, then you return false saying like, hey, I've got nothing I want to do. That'll be the thought process on this. So you'll return. Technically, there's a way to get around this, but we're just going to assume is if your iActivate a wrench class, you're always using it. But what we could do the same thing we did for our other class and just go default boolean capture wrench click, or do We'll call it handles wrench right click. And this will just be a base method. We aren't going to do anything with it because what we're looking for is if it handles it, period. Okay, so we'll define that real quick and we'll go ahead and put that in here. It's a bit of a long method or little call here. This can be fixed by just doing like something like that. It's not as easy to read, but it prevents it from going like way off the screen. To be honest, this is implemented at this point. Yeah, this looks good. So we're going to do wrench calls first. If we handle the wrench call, we handle the wrench. Then we're going to do GUI. If we handle the GUI, we do the GUI. If we don't, we call IActivatable. If nothing else happens, we do this. And of course, you would keep appending more and more stuff down here. You just have an order of operation that would make sure this should be the last thing that's always called. Anything that should be specially handled should be called before it. Yeah, we're good there. I can't think of anything else we're going to need. Everything else would be just a lot of special case stuff, like if we add multi-block pass-through, which multi-blocks are going to be their own little thing. Yeah, we're good on that one, and I'm not sure what else we can do. We'll fix this up here real quick. So we're going to call this, and this lets us get rid of pretty much that whole piece there. A lot of other things I got to put in here, like I got to do on neighbor change. There's a lot of block check placement that has to be implemented because you're only going to be able to place a block in a certain condition. Some of this will be JSON driven, like you'll have a multi-block property system where instead of defining in your tile logic what your multi-block looks like, you'll go, okay, here's every different variation of my multi-block structure, and then you put that in there. One, that takes away a lot of the work necessary to actually implement it code-wise, and two, that lets another user come through, and if they decide they want to make your multi-block bigger, they can. Unless you rely on the multi-block to be handled a certain way, which, yeah. Well, I'll touch that subject up later. Of course, I need to do this too, so we're going to paste that. This is where we're just going to drop everything in the inventory. I actually could just do this. Inventory iterator, iterator equals new inventory iterator tile. Technically, I need to handle this in a certain way. Yeah, actually, I need this to put this back to normal. World.getTileInity x.y.z. And the reason I need to do it this way is the inventory code when it comes to the tile system is implemented on the wrapper, not the node. The node doesn't have inventory code. The node, however, does have external inventory code. And we'll do a few different things here. What we're actually going to do is I'm going to do something like this. I inventory equals null. And then we're going to remove this, and we're going to go if inventory doesn't equal null, then we'll pass in the inventory here. And this will let us iterate through it, and yeah, we want the non-null slots. Yeah, cool thing with the inventory iterator, it'll iterate through all the slots, and it'll give me only the slots that have stuff in them. And then what I can do is, I believe it's inventory.setStack, and then I believe iterator.slot, and then I want to do null, but then I want to do inventory utility.drop item stack. This will be world x, y, z. I believe it's a whole random system I got to do with this. So yeah, there's a delay and there's a random. We want the delay to be 0 because we want items to be picked up instantly, and we want the random to be 0 because we don't want items being thrown everywhere. Of course, I have to actually pass an item stack in this too. So we want to go stack, And that's basically drop inventory code. Now for people that might be actually familiar with this, the normal Minecraft drop inventory code is like, I think 14, 15 lines. This is completed in 5, thanks to the inventory iterator, which gets rid of the whole need to do null checks and verification checks and everything else, because it'll do all the work. It's a really simple thing as well, just implements iterable and iterator. And you just next calls and it various things. And this is the point where it's useful to go to college to learn how to do this stuff, because if I never went to college, I would have never been told how an iterator worked on the most fundamental level, and then therefore I'm capable of making my own iterators. Most people just have no experience with that. Some people are lucky; they end up diving down into iterators and stumbling across them or doing whatever, and they end up using them. I've never been so lucky, so I've got that. There's a lot of other things I want to implement too that I've learned. There's sublist. Like instead of actually taking a list and cutting it in half and doing something with it, you can instead call sublist, which you pass in the original list, and then you say, okay, my starting point is 3 and my end point is like 20 or something. Then your list will act like it's between 3 and 20, but it'll minus, so your 0 point is 3, but then everything else treats it as 0, so that you can do your iterations through that sublist. Very useful. It'll be amazing for parsing inventories. Like I plan to do parallel processing to detect if items are in inventories. So many cool little things. So this code works. And what I need to do is inventory equals tile. Then we got to do a check for external inventory. You know what's really cool we can actually do with this? I have a really dumb idea, but this might work. Trying to think of how to actually do that. No, so we're going to do pass in tile. There's no easy way to do this. I'm thinking like I could create a for loop and put both the objects in there and make it work that way, but you know what? Actually, I can still use a for loop. I just can't do a really intelligent for loop. It has to be something simple like this. Actually, it'll be, instead of doing it this way, we'll go while tile doesn't equal null. And they'll get that, and then we'll go tile instance of I external, or I inventory provider is what it actually is. Then we're going to do inventory equals, actually y, and we want to do this, and inventory doesn't equal null. So we find an inventory, or my inventory equals null. So if we find an inventory, we want to make sure that we stop iteration process. This one would be tile.getInventory, and then at the end of this, we want to go if we go tile is instance of tile entity. Then we want to, or actually, we want to go tile instance of tile entity, or tile is instance of iTile node host, because to be honest, the node shouldn't be a host. If it is, it's a multi-block. And if it's a multi-block, we'll get its host and it'll work. So good. Then we want to just basically do tile equals tile.getTileHost, and then we want to go else if tile is instance of iTile node. We basically want to set it to null. So this will be our exit condition. This will guarantee we exit. Actually, we'll do it this way. Just if it's else, it's just going to null. This guarantees our exit out of the loop. This guarantees that if we get a tile node, we iterate one more time. And if we have some kind of stupid nested hierarchy, it'll iterate multiple times. And then that'll get us our inventory, and then this will dump our inventory out on the ground. So if we break our tile, which I can show this code working in like 2 seconds. Well, not actually 2 seconds, but I can show it working. And then we'll call that actually the end of the video, because I need to figure out what I'm going to record for the next time, because making these we're going to wing it videos are not exactly helpful. I mean, helpful on your guys' side, because you guys are probably learning only little bits and pieces, where I probably should focus these videos more on learning a lot more in detail for certain things. Then again, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna work on this, and I don't know, I think the next video we might work on some guns some more. I gotta do some AI turrets. We'll actually implement our AI turrets as a tile node system, and we'll see about implementing an entity, and we'll see about implementing our actual tile base. There's a lot of work I gotta do with that though. I'm probably just gonna copy the ICBM's AMS turret and just update it. Because the AMS turret works, but the AMS turret has no ray tracing on it, which is the reason why it shoots through walls if nobody's noticed. That will be fixed actually. The AMS turret's actually going to be outmoded probably here, and what it'll be is it'll act as an add-on for the armory mod indirectly. So it'll be a JSON driven AI turret, and if you have the armory mod installed, ICBM will suddenly get an AMS turret. If you don't, no AMS turret. Unfortunately. So this should still be working. We're going to clean out all of our junk out of this. And then I'm going to put it all back in here. And we'll let it drain. Now, this is a 10 slot system, so this thing can fill up pretty quickly. It's kind of where I wish I had something a little better than a hopper, because hoppers do one item, I believe, a second? I don't think they do an item per tick. I could be wrong though. Filling up pretty good. It's got enough items in it. If we break it, yeah, there we go. It dropped items. And if we place it back down again, it'll fill back up. And if we break it again, items. Works out pretty good. So that's pretty simplistic code, and that's less code as a developer I have to implement. So that means every tile that has an inventory on it, or an iInventory provider, automatically gets drop code as long as it utilizes the block base. And if pretty much everything's going to utilize the block base pretty soon. I'm going to transition the old tile wrapper to use this system. And what I'm going to do is just take the old tile class and apply all these wonderful interfaces we've been making. So the wrench code is going to be applied to it, and then activation code, and then there'll be wrapper to the old method and deprecated, so that way people understand that the old tile code is going to disappear. Because as soon as I get all this set up, I'm deleting the old tile code, which means backwards compatibility will disappear on it, which is intentional. But that's in a video. I'll get more of these out for you guys later, and I'm hopefully going to start on my how to code videos pretty soon. I'm trying to write the scripts out for them, and they'll go over pretty much anything and everything on coding related, from creating workspaces to using GitHub to doing Java basics. I might even cover other languages, but Java is pretty much my main language. Doing things like Lua and Python, I can code in them, but not very well. Same for basic C, C++, C#, so many different languages. Haskell, Fortran. Forget the name of the one for Unity's got its own language too. It's JavaScript. I hesitate to call PHP a language, but in the video.